The Pittsburgh Steelers are placing a massive bet on the 2025 NFL season, pinning a lot of their hopes on a 41-year-old quarterback by the name of Aaron Rodgers. And if his performance at the conclusion of mandatory minicamp is any indication, Rodgers has already seemingly convinced the Steelers brass that this was absolutely the right decision. The buzz coming out of Pittsburgh is palpable. Several members of the Steelers coaching staff have been absolutely raving about Rodgers and what he brings to the table for the team this fall. Steelers quarterback coach Tom Arth had perhaps the most emphatic response to the media, making it clear just how good the veteran quarterback looked during minicamp. "I still think he's at the top of his game. I think he's a top quarterback in the league," Arth said, showering praise. "Aaron was extremely impressive. He still throws the ball very well. He's accurate. He's so smart. You can see his decision-making, doesn't take a lot of sacks." Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith echoed those incredibly high comments. "We're talking about one of the greatest passers in the history of this game," Smith stated. "Not many guys have thrown the ball from the football like Aaron Rodgers, and obviously he's still doing that at a high level." Even Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin, known for his often reserved media answers, kept his response brief but was equally clear that Rodgers is making a strong impression. When asked what Rodgers will bring to the Steelers, Tomlin simply replied, "Read his resume. That's high praise from a coach who demands excellence." It's worth remembering that Rodgers did miss voluntary offseason workouts in May, and he was unsigned for much of the offseason while dealing with personal issues, which he publicly explained during an appearance on ESPN's The Pat McAfee Show back in April. However, his performance at mandatory minicamp seems to have completely washed away any concerns. Now, it's important not to get too carried away with performances in off-season workouts. They often don't mean much, especially once the preseason and regular season truly arrive. But what Rodgers' arrival and his minicamp showing do seem to confirm is that the Steelers' coaching staff is incredibly optimistic that 2025 will be vastly different than the last couple of years. If anything, Rodgers' practice performances have only amplified that excitement within the organization. Rodgers will turn 42 years old in December, a rare age for an NFL quarterback. But he will also be a full second year removed from his significant 2023 Achilles injury, and as only the all-time great quarterbacks have been able to do. Rodgers has continued to adapt his game. "Aaron, the way he sees the game is different than he was when he was 25 to now that he's in his early 40s. But he's still throwing the ball at a high level," Arthur Smith added, highlighting Rodgers' evolution. "It sounds as though Rodgers simply delivered the minicamp performance the Steelers fully expected, based on the extensive offseason studying they did of the veteran quarterback." Sys Albert Breer reported that even as the Jets struggled early in the 2024 season with Rodgers limited by his Achilles and then a hamstring injury, the Steelers saw Rodgers returning to form. Breer noted specific instances. In the Jets' Halloween game against the Texans, Rodgers made a few big-time back shoulder throws. He reportedly played well in both Dolphins games. And crucially, in Week 16 against the Jaguars, Pittsburgh saw vintage Rodgers, with a late go-ahead touchdown throw to Davante Adams really standing out as a moment that solidified their confidence. All of this leads to the ultimate goal for the Steelers, snapping their playoff losing streak. Last year, the Steelers added a Super Bowl-winning veteran quarterback in Russell Wilson, who hadn't won a playoff game in 5 years, hoping he'd be the answer. This year, it will be Rodgers' turn to try and end Pittsburgh's postseason drought. 5 years removed from his own last playoff win, Rodgers has made just one postseason start over the last 4 seasons, a loss at home in the divisional round. Overall, he holds an 11-10 record in his playoff career as a starter, famously leading the Green Bay Packers to the Super Bowl after the 2010 season. Interestingly, Mike Tomlin also won a Super Bowl early in his tenure, but since losing to Rodgers in that very Super Bowl, Tomlin is just 3-10 in the playoffs. Pittsburgh's last postseason win was in January 2017, marking the team's longest playoff win drought since the organization won its first postseason game way back in 1972. The stage is set. Aaron Rodgers has made a strong first impression. The coaching staff is clearly impressed. Now, the question remains, Can the 41-year-old future Hall of Famer truly be the answer that finally snaps the Pittsburgh Steelers' playoff losing streak and leads them back to contention? What are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh? Do you think he's still got it to be a top QB and lead the Steelers to a deep playoff run? Let us know in the comments below. Alright, NFL fans. A lot of eyes are on the Pittsburgh Steelers and their new 41-year-old quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. After his first week with the team at mandatory minicamp, Rodgers is already raising eyebrows and seemingly has the Steelers' coaching staff convinced he was the right decision. Several Steelers coaches raved about Rodgers' performance. Quarterback coach Tom Arth was particularly emphatic, saying, "I still think he's at the top of his game. I think he's a top quarterback in the league." Arth praised Rodgers' accuracy, intelligence, decision-making, and ability to avoid sacks. Offensive coordinator Arthur Smith echoed these sentiments, calling him one of the greatest passers in the history of this game. Even head coach Mike Tomlin kept it brief but clear, simply stating, "Read his resume." This glowing assessment comes despite Rodgers missing voluntary offseason workouts due to personal issues earlier in the spring. What makes it even more encouraging for Steelers fans is that Rodgers is now 2 years removed from his devastating 2023 Achilles injury. The coaching staff believes he's continued to adapt his game, still throwing at a high level. Reports from offseason scouting even indicate the Steelers saw Rodgers returning to form late in the 2024 season. Despite the Jets' struggles, they specifically highlighted vintage Rodgers moments, including a key go-ahead touchdown throw to Davante Adams. Now, the big question for Pittsburgh is whether Rodgers can snap their significant playoff losing streak. The Steelers haven't won a postseason game since January 2017, marking their longest playoff win drought since 1972. Rodgers, with an 11-10 career playoff record and a Super Bowl title from the 2010 season, is now tasked with ending that drought. This partnership between Rodgers and Mike Tomlin, who also won an early Super Bowl but is 3-10 in the playoffs since 2011, will be one of the most compelling storylines of the upcoming NFL season. Alright, NFL fans. A lot of eyes are on the Pittsburgh Steelers and their new 41-year-old quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. After his first week with the team at mandatory minicamp, Rodgers is already raising eyebrows and seemingly has the Steelers' coaching staff convinced he was the right decision. Several Steelers coaches raved about Rodgers' performance. Quarterback coach Tom Arth was particularly emphatic, saying, "I still think he's at the top of his game. I think he's a top quarterback in the league." Arth praised Rodgers' accuracy, intelligence, decision-making, and ability to avoid sacks. Offensive coordinator Arthur Smith echoed these sentiments, calling him one of the greatest passers in the history of this game. Even head coach Mike Tomlin kept it brief but clear, simply stating,